Hi, my name is David Wen.
I'm Ryan Kuang.
And I'm Andrew Cho. And this is our data analysis presentation for Widget Co.
So first, a quick analysis of Widget Co. It sells relatively inexpensive goods. Its business model is mainly based on volume. Production happens in a low-cost sort of country, and supply chain is dependent on the geopolitical stability of the country. It ships goods to countries around the world, and the bulk of revenue comes from the consumer's demand.
So for our rating system, we're going to give each country, USA, China, Canada, and France, a rating of good, bad, or we will consider the country. And right now you can see a summary of our ratings, and we'll go into a bit more explanation of why we gave that rating right now.
All right, so starting off with the USA, our overall rating is good. The two main stats to look at are inflation versus recession. So obviously, as you can see, inflation is starting to level off in recession. The chances of a recession based on consumer spending are starting to also taper off as well. So opportunities, the first graph is of inflation adjusted consumer spending. As you can see, that's also going strong. There's a lot of money available. Obviously, interest hikes might be able to affect that. There's a large amount of popularity in novel items such as fidget spinners, which made millions of dollars in 2017 or so. And then delinquency is on the rise. However, it is still staying low. And then the challenges, again, are also, again, inflation because it's still remaining high, even though it is starting to taper off. And population, we're starting to see an average life expectancy start to decrease, which means that the health of the country is starting to decrease as well.
Now let's take a look at China. Our overall rating for this country was bad, and we'll go into why. So see, these are some of China's statistics. As you can see, they have a huge population, but the growth rate is slowing down, and most of the population is aging rapidly. Also, here's some China's economic statistics. As you can see, China's GDP growth is declining, and that signals a slowing economy, which means the country's overall economic situation is not doing so well. So some opportunities of China are it's a large market and obviously has the largest population in the world, which means we would have many people to sell our product to. It also has a large workforce, which means that we could manufacture projects with ease. However, here we face many challenges. So as I mentioned earlier, China has a slowing economy, as well as many issues of intellectual theft, with 225 to 600 billions lost in the past years. China also has lots of bad policies, which makes us believe that overall the situation in China is not worth jumping into, and that our overall rating for this country is considered bad.
Next, we have Canada. So Canada, we do not consider it to be good. It is a very wealthy country, but the population is so small and it's also decreasing. Furthermore, it has an interest rate set by the central bank to be one of the highest in the world at 4.5%. Opportunities, obviously, it's wealthy, it has good trade agreements with the United States, and it can easily switch infrastructure between the US and Canada. Migration, despite the slowing births, it still remains strong, representing a new target market of new immigrants. However, the challenges outweigh those. Again, it has one of the highest interests in the world, which indicates that the government is worried about inflation more than recession. Population is already small and is growing at a slower rate. Inflation is still 6.88%, which is relatively high. And there's, again, geopolitical instability because there's an increasingly powerful separatist movement with Quebec, and Alberta is also voicing discontent with the federal government.
Next is France, and we rated this with a maybe and considering. So a bit of France statistics. There's a 67 million population in France with a 0.5% growth rate, and human capital index is 0.77 with a GDP growth of 2.5%. And so there's also a very huge GDP in US dollars in France, as well as a pretty high GDP per capita. And the poverty headcount, which is an important factor to consider about the wealthiness of the country, is 0%. So what are some opportunities? First is consumer access. France is the third largest economy in Europe. It provides a lot of access to EU markets and a lot of growth in consumer spending. Second is a skilled workforce. France has 15 billion euros to employment efforts recently, and is also very strong in cost-effective public education, government programs, and social welfare programs that make working in France very beneficial to the average worker. And third is transportation. Europe has the third largest, a very big road network, as well as a very large railroad network, and France has third and second largest in Europe. It also has a lot of coast access on the coast of France and also international flights from various airports that provide easy transportation of goods into France and out of France. So what are some challenges? First is high labor costs. Since the workforce is relatively skilled, it means it costs more to pay for them, and this means that businesses have to use more money on labor rather than use it on other stuff. There's a lot of employee benefits as well as need to account for high taxes for the workforce, which also increase the cost for businesses such as Widget Co. Number two is high business tax rates. I think France has one of the most highest tax rates in Europe with 28.4 corporate tax rate, and this includes property, payroll, etc. And so doing business in France is relatively expensive and can make you lose a bit more money than actually gain money. But in the overall long run, we see the benefits kind of outmatch challenges in this case, and that's why we give it a overall rating of maybe.
So, in conclusion, our best location is US. We're going to consider and examine France furthermore, and we are not really going to consider China and Canada. Thanks. Do you have any questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.